Good morning, Cedar Park. This morning we have a special edition of the Wolfcast telling you everything you need to know about district elections and how they impact us, as well as we go behind the ballot.
Plus, I sat down for a one-on-one interview in studio with Superintendent Bruce Gearing as he breaks down the upcoming propositions and he responds to some criticisms from school board candidates.
And catch the top 3 things you need to know this morning, plus your pet of the week.
Turn it up because a special edition of the Wolfcast starts now. Good morning, Cedar Park, and welcome back. I'm Abby Martinez, and I'm here this morning with Jack Polshik and Katie Whitmarsh.
With Election Day less than a month away, it's vital for voters to know what they are voting on, especially in local elections. That includes Propositions A and B that are on the ballot for Leander ISD. Reporter Anthony Luparella joins us with more for another Behind the Ballot story. Anthony.
Thanks, Katie. Leander Independent School District is considering these 2 propositions on the November 8th ballot, both of which hold very important responsibilities for the school district and its citizens. There are strong supporters and opponents to each prop.
Beginning with the attendance credit election, otherwise known as Proposition A, a school district's property value may exceed a point to where the school has to give some of the money back to the state via a recapture payment, which has to be approved via an election. If Prop A passes, the district would have to make the mandatory recapture payments to the state as required by the law, and this passing would simply give them the permission to do so. If Prop A fails, however, Leander ISD will be subject to a detachment of territory, meaning the state could detach a part of the district's land, lowering the property value. This would cause the school to have to raise the interest and sinking tax rate to pay the remaining debt. Next, the voter approval tax rate election, referred to as Proposition B, allows voters to ratify tax rates that have already been set by the school board. If Prop B passes, the tax rate adopted by the Board of Trustees would be approved, making the overall tax rate 6.24 cents lower than last year's property taxes, allowing the district to fund the compensation plan passed earlier this year and raise around $32 million for classroom learning, various school programs, and teacher salaries. However, if Prop B fails, the school district will face a $29.5 million budget deficit, causing the school district to make spending cuts that could potentially result in fewer teachers working in the district and the possible removal of certain programs, impacting future compensation increases. For more information, go to leanderisd.org/elections.
With all this information in mind, make sure to vote on November 8th if you can. With CPHS News, I'm Anthony Luparello. You can find more information on the elections as we partner with the Wolfpack for full coverage. Just visit cphsnews.com. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Anthony. Coming up, Superintendent Bruce Gearing is answering your pressing questions about the props in an interview with Jack. But first, this break.
Now we go over to Jack, joined by our superintendent.
Thanks, Abby. So as we cover upcoming district elections, Dr. Gearing is here with us to answer some of your questions. Good morning, Dr. Gearing.
Good morning, Jack.
How are you doing today?
Wonderful, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks for asking. So just kind of jump right into things, if you had to explain Prop A to students, how would you describe it?
Well, Proposition A is called an attendance credit election, or ACE, and it has to do with recapture. So because of rising appraisal values in the district has fallen back into recapture, and in order to make that recapture payment, we have to purchase attendance credits from the state of Texas. In order to do that, we have to have the authorization of all of our voters to purchase those attendance credits. And so this election is asking permission from our voters to make that purchase in order to make our recapture payment back to the state.
Mm-hmm. And can you kind of clarify what an attendance credit looks like or how it works?
So an attendance credit is really just a paper exercise. We owe $31.2 million in recapture back to the state, and this is a way for us to make that payment to the state. It essentially artificially increases our attendance numbers in the district in order to get us out of recapture.
And can you explain what recapture means to people who maybe don't understand?
So in school finance in the state of Texas, the state determines the amount of money that we should be getting as a school district to adequately educate the students in our district. As a property-rich district, we are pulling in more tax revenue than that assigned amount. And so the additional money that we receive from our local taxpayers then goes back to the state to be redistributed to other school districts.
Yeah, awesome. And how would Prop A affect students if it passes?
So if it passes, then we can continue with business as usual, and so students would not really feel any impact of that. We'd make our recapture payment back to the state and go on with our daily business.
And if it fails, how would it be different?
So if it fails, then the state is going to get their recapture dollars in some form or fashion, and so they will do what they call an annexation or detachment of property. Again, it's a paper exercise, and so they would detach certain property value from our tax rolls. And again, this is an administrative function, so the students necessarily wouldn't feel the impact of that, but that would have an impact on the school district financially over the long term. And so in the long term, there might be some impact on students eventually.
Now, the payment made to the state, is that going to happen like no matter what? Is there no way to kind of stop that?
Right, so because of school finance and Chapter 49 of the Texas Education Code, we are required to make that payment. So regardless, we owe recapture back to the state.
Gotcha. Now, let's talk about Prop B. How would you describe that to students?
So Proposition B is called a voter approval tax rate election. Again, this has to do with rapidly rising appraisal values in the district, but the board is managing the tax rate. So we have two different parts of our tax rate. We have the interest and sinking portion, which is to pay off the debt in the district, and then the maintenance and operation tax rate, which is to pay the daily operating expenses of the district, such as salaries, fuel for the buses, supplies, things like that. The board is, because of a rise in appraisal values, we're getting too much money on the debt side and not enough money on the M&O side. And so the board is lowering the tax rate on the INS side by 13.5 pennies and raising the tax rate on the M&O side by 9 pennies for an overall tax rate decrease, but getting the money where it needs to be so that we can manage the district effectively financially.
And if Prop B fails, how would that affect students?
So if Prop B fails, then we'll have about a $30 million deficit because of the way that the board set the budget and the tax rate for this current school year. The board would have to eat that deficit out of their fund balance, out of our savings account. And we can do that one time because we've been fiscally responsible for many years, but you cannot continue to spend money that you don't have out of your savings account over time. And so that means that starting in December, the administration would have to come together to find how to cut that $30 million.
Yeah. And where specifically would you be the top 3 places that you would suggest the cuts come from if it fails?
So the thing about our budget is we're about 86% of our budget is in people. And so if you have to cut a large amount of money, like $30 million from your budget, then eventually you're going to have to cut positions out of the district. And so we would do everything in our power to not affect the actual people who are in the district. So things like existing positions that are unfilled right now, we'd try to get rid of those first. We'd also do attrition, so people who leave out of positions, we'd see if we could not replace those positions. And eventually we'd have to start to cut actual people in the district. We will do everything in our power to avoid campus or student-facing cuts, but it's going to be challenging when you have to cut that many positions from the district.
Yeah. And when asking some of the board candidates about where they want to see budget cuts, some said that they were in favor of reducing counseling staff across the district. How would you respond to that?
So counseling staff would be one of the last places I think we'd look for 2 reasons primarily. Number one, we already have heavy loads on our counselors. So the ratio of students to counselors in the district is already high. And so removing additional counselors would be extremely stressful for those existing counselors. And then second, that has a large impact on students, number one, who wouldn't get their academic guidance needs met or their social emotional needs met. And so that would be very challenging for students and also very challenging for teachers and other staff, because when they lose the support of those counselors, then some of that burden comes on to classroom teachers, and that would make that extremely difficult.
And some members have even suggested from some candidates, from like higher level positions, but that doesn't take a lot of the budget. What is like your response to that?
So, we could essentially cut all of our higher central office administration from the district and not find $30 million in cuts. And then, of course, the rest of the campuses wouldn't have the support that the central office provides on a daily basis. And so this is a large corporation. We're running a $400 million budget with about 5,000 employees. It takes a lot of administrative work to take care of that. So yes, we will look for ways to cut as much of that as we can, but there are some essential functions in the district that have to be taken care of at the administrative level in order for the organization to survive.
And a big question we're hearing in the community is, how did the district get into this kind of budget situation to begin with, and how would you respond to these concerns?
Absolutely. So this is really a product, like I said earlier, of rapidly rising appraisal values across the district. And because of the way that school finance is structured in Texas, based primarily on property tax revenue, that puts us in this position of being back in recapture number one and requiring Proposition A or the A selection, and then also having to manage the tax rate. And that is what causes Proposition B. And so the management of the tax rate, though, it's important to understand that the board's actually lowering the overall tax rate by almost 6.25 pennies in that process.
And thank you for clarifying that. I really appreciate it. Depending on the outcome of these elections, when would Prop A and B go into effect?
So these go into effect immediately. So Proposition A would then allow us to make our recapture payment this school year as we normally would, and so that would be effective immediately. And then Proposition B, the board has actually already set the tax rate back in August, and so this would just be a ratification of that tax rate.
Gotcha.
And so we would continue immediately with those changes.
Okay. And some school board candidates have made claims that the educational curriculum focuses too much on sexually explicit content, even in younger grades. To quote Mike Sanders, they shouldn't be teaching elementary kids anything about sex. What is your response or position on that?
So we are public school. We do have students from all walks of life walk into our classrooms on a daily basis. We do have a responsibility to make sure that they are well educated. We do have curriculum guides from the state. We follow all of those state guidelines in terms of all of the curriculum that we follow. We do also have really strong board policy in place, EF Legal and EF Local, that govern how we select curriculum that comes into the district, and then how the community, if they're interested, can challenge that curriculum. And we've been following those policies very carefully. We are doing everything by the legal book. We are allowing people to have their due process in this. We've done a lot of work to make sure that we're listening to the community and understanding what their concerns are and responding to those concerns appropriately. And so we feel that we're doing a strong job of making sure that our students are well educated, that they see themselves in the material that's provided to them, their instructional materials, and that they have opportunity to understand who they are, and we're also working very closely with families to make sure that they are aware of the content that's available to their children in the classrooms, and we continue to follow our board policy and school law.
Yeah. So would you say those claims are kind of exaggerated sometimes?
I think that those are valid concerns that parents have, and we're making sure that we listen to those concerns very carefully, and that we respond to them appropriately. But we continue to, we feel, respond to them appropriately and give the opportunity for parents to share their concerns with us.
Gotcha. And finally, with the election of new school board members, what is it like adjusting to new incumbents every election season?
That's a great question, Jack, because unless you've been a school board member, it's very difficult to understand the work that a school board member does. School board members, number one, are volunteers, and so they don't get paid for their jobs, but they have really tough jobs. They do a lot of extra work. Most of them are full-time employees in some other profession, and they do this as a volunteer exercise to support the students of their community.
Yeah.
It is tough work. And it takes a while for new board members to get acclimatized to how the school board works. There are 7 school board members, but they act as one entity. So they are one decision-making organization. So they cannot make any decision outside of a board meeting. And it takes a majority of at least 4 of them to make any decision. And then that decision is binding on the school board. So It takes a little bit of time for folks to get used to that, to understand that even if they come in with a specific agenda, with something they want to get done in the school district, that those things are not always possible because of policy, because of law, because of procedures. And they come to understand quickly that also in our case, we are a large organization of 42,000 students, almost 5,500 employees, and things don't just happen on a dime. And so usually I find it takes new school board members about a year for them to really truly start to understand what their role is and how they can be effective as trustees of children, because that really is their job.
Yeah, awesome. And then finally, what would you say is like your biggest accomplishment as a superintendent so far?
So this is the start of my 4th year in Leander ISD and my start of my 15th year as a superintendent in the state of Texas. And the work that the school board has done on establishing their core beliefs, their vision, their mission, and their strategic plan has been really profound work. It has laid a foundation for Leander ISD to go forward in the next 5, 10, probably 15 years on a path towards transformation of public education. And I'm extremely proud of the work that we're doing together as a team of 8 to guide this large organization towards excellent education for the children of our community.
And I'm hearing that you are also a bagpipe player. Is this true?
That is true, yes. I've been playing bagpipes since I was 8 years old.
Wow. And how good are your skills?
So I once was very good. I'm not as good anymore because I don't play as much anymore, but I do still enjoy playing the bagpipes.
Nice. Well, that's awesome to hear. And I think that wraps about everything up. Thank you again for taking the time to join us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Jack. Really appreciate it and glad to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you being on here.
Thanks, Jack. Coming up next, the top 3 things you need to know this morning, but first, this quick break.
First, Denmark's underwater natural gas pipeline, the Nord Stream, has been leaking gas due to powerful explosions. Investigators say this is likely due to sabotage. The gas line carries natural gas from Russia to Germany and then Denmark and Sweden. German investigators have refused to share findings due to international security concerns. Russia blames the United States for this act of terrorism due to this being Russia's main natural gas pipeline since invading Ukraine. Next, a Texas woman who was attacked by a bison in a state park takes a TikTok to share her rules of thumb when dealing with bison. This TikTok video has over 2 million views and shows her being attacked and playing dead until it ran off. Park rangers say she was off the trail and not following safety guidelines. Lastly, the Boston Celtics pay tribute to Bill Russell wearing their new City Edition jerseys during their opening season. Russell, who passed away this July, was the center for the Celtics for 13 years, winning 11 championship rings and also becoming the first black coach in the NBA. The new jersey uses the font of Russell's restaurant where he hosted Muhammad Ali and civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. The jersey also has 11 gold diamonds representing the championships. Overall, a very important opening game for the Celtics and hopefully followed by a great season. With CPH News, I'm reporter Kylie Young, and those are your top 3 things this morning.
So guys, wild animals in state parks. They'll get you. I almost got eaten by a bear. True story.
What was the story behind that? We gotta know that.
No, I was on a hike in Glacier, and like 6-8 feet ahead of me, there's just a big brown bear.
Well, it's good that you're fine. The lady's fine. Everyone's good.
Yeah. People just get really close.
Yeah. So I want to know what were her rules of thumb?
Personally, I'm not sure. I know she went to go take photos of it, and then she just ended up playing dead.
People
See,
just
I
get too
just
close.
I think people get so close. I'm like, dude, that animal is about 70 times the size of you, and like is strong enough to just like flick you and you're dead.
Yeah.
Also, she like went off of the trail, and I feel like in a national park.
Yeah,
that's a very
Maybe don't do that. It's
Yeah.
a very important
like
thing.
she seems kind of like okay, you don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's good. We're all good. Anyway, moving on.
Thanks, Kylie.
Now it's time for your pet of the week. Atlas is a black-mouthed cur / Jack Russell mix adopted last July. Atlas adopted 3 other families before finding his forever home with Madam Campbell. He has high energy, he loves playing with other dogs and people at the dog park, and he is incredibly friendly to everyone he meets. Atlas loves goldfish, crackers, bananas, destroying toys, and playing keep away. He is an intelligent dog but cannot seem to get the hang of not jumping on people to greet them. That being said, Atlas has hops. If you'd like your pet to be featured on Pet of the Week, direct message us on our Instagram account at CPHS News or tweet us your videos and a short bio of your pet, also at CPHS News. And that's all we have for you today. Make sure you're keeping up with all of our content. Head over to our YouTube at CPHS News.
You can also follow at CPHS_sports for updates during the games.
We'll see you tomorrow with stories on PSAT and Freshman Senior Summit Day and an all-new T-Wolf Spotlight.
Thanks for taking time to join us this morning.
With CPHS News, I'm Katie Whitmarsh.
I'm Kylie Young.
I'm Jack Balshuk.
And I'm Abby Martinez. Remember to make it a great day or not. The choice is yours. Have a wonderful Wednesday, Cedar Park.